you are looking at, if we look at symptoms to start with, to start with that. So from the point that you're infected, let me be concise about that. From the point we're saying that obviously we can detect no virus. So at that point, you've got less than one copy of the virus. If we are detecting virus, so you have an infection and we're saying it's one copy or more,
That's the
then that's the bit where you're starting on that blue line, where the blue line intersects that purple line. So you're kind of starting on that journey. And so your viral load is then building up, and it builds up over 5, 6, 7 days, and you start getting symptomatic 5 days after we can detect it as an infection. That's roughly the point. And then your symptoms build over the next 10 days. You get more and more ill, those people that are symptomatic. And then eventually your body kicks in and you start, dropping off in terms of viral load.
Yeah. So the serology, so if we just go up those lines on the back and just explain, the purple line is where our IC gene detects in the process. So as we move forward then, the standard PCR is picking things up in that same viral load building about 3 days after we're saying. Would that be accurate, or 2 days?
Yeah, it depends. If you say somewhere between 2.5 and 10 times less sensitive, so you're talking a few more days in, say the 3 days. So it's just showing that you've got LAMP down at the bottom, which is the most sensitive, so you're detecting it earliest, and you keep detecting it longest. You've got PCR that you start detecting it, a few days after we can. And obviously it stops detecting it whilst we're still detecting it. And you've then obviously got all the problems we know with PCR, of contamination, of inhibition, of all these, problems that can go wrong. So that is very much a best case PCR. The real world PCR is not as good as that. Okay, so what a virus is, the cells for example, in your throat get worn away quite quickly, and and they're producing mucus and all these other secretions. So it's a very active part of your body, the lining of your mouth, the lining of your throat, your nose, etc. And it's designed to get worn away. So the cells are very actively reproducing, and it's why with oncology drugs that people get sores in their mouth and sores in their throat, because the drugs are killing off cells. And if you do it, I don't know, the skin of your elbow or something, if you kill off a few cells there, it doesn't matter, because the cells are lying around for ages, they're doing their job, they don't get replaced that often, etc. So they're fairly robust, but they're designed to be replaced very quickly in all those sort of mucosal areas. So if you kill them off, then immediately start getting sores and everything, which is what the oncology drugs do. So what a virus does is it, through this particular receptor, this ACE2 receptor, that there's a spike protein on the virus that literally docks with the ACE2 receptor on the cell. It injects the RNA, the genetic material of the virus, and it works just like a computer virus. So it reprograms that cell that is actively dividing, and it's a very, it's a very active, energetic environment, and it reprograms it completely. So instead of that cell going about its normal business, producing more cells that are throat cells and mucus and everything else, it takes it over and it programs it to make billions and billions of copies of a virus. So that one cell will suddenly start churning out billions of copies of a virus, and it will forget that it's a throat cell anymore. And then ultimately it will probably run out of energy and die, or it will rupture and release virus and shed virus. So that's the way these things work, the viruses work. They reprogram cells, and eventually your immune system will cotton onto that, and it will look at the virus. It will look at the damage the virus is doing, so it will try and come in and mop up all the dead cells, and it reacts in lots of different ways, and antibodies are one of those routes. So That's the process that starts. So we are detecting it at the point there is a very, very, very light infection, that there is basically no, if you are negative on an IgG test, you're simply not shedding virus because the viral load, it has not had enough cells infected and rupture. It's at a very, very early stage because of this one copy of the virus per microliter.
Yeah.
So it's literally on that stage where the virus is proliferating, it's infecting different cells, it's starting to make copies, but it's not got far down that road at all. And so if you then look at PCR that's 2-3 days later, then yeah, probably you're kind of picking up people that are shedding virus now. Not heavily, but they will be infective. And the serology tests, if you're looking at antibodies, clearly at that point your body has had a sufficient viral load that it's kicked in and has started to produce some antibodies and just about getting its immune response together. But by that point, you're kind of spraying virus everywhere. So that's why, those are pointless. And many people don't exhibit antibodies, the IgM, IgG anyway. So, they kind of build up afterwards, a long time afterwards. But by then, you're probably coughing and sneezing, the people who got it, and feeling generally ill.
So, I mean, therefore, in very simple terms, we're picking up roughly around maybe 24 hours after somebody has taken on a very
yeah,
and
something like that.
The period, there's then this period of time when the virus is building up within them, but it's impossible for them to shed it at that time.
Exactly, it's an incubation period. It's just spreading internally, and the rate of that depends on viral load. So if you're wearing a face mask and it's pretty good and you're being careful, then you may only take on a few copies of the virus, and you may have a slower period. So you may test negative for a longer period until it gets hold, and even then you have a lighter infection. Or you might take on a heavy viral load if somebody coughs on you, or you're in a heavy area of contamination like a food factory or something like that. So there's variability in it, but we have to pick a number, and being safe about it. That's the number. That you've got at least 3 days before, even in an aggressive environment, you can build up enough virus to shed.
So that's conservative thinking of 3 days before people.
Yeah.
No, I think brilliant. I think that's a lovely little explanation, and that is great. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. No worries.